Okay, so to explain, YouTube's copyright system is garbage, and while I could fight the strike, it's just not worth it. I don't care that it was going to be the most viewed video on my channel, it's just not worth it when any momentum the video had is dead. I've decided to add what would be this week's video to this one, so feel free to skip to the timestamp if you just want the new stuff. For those that want to see the animes, just keep watching. Well, since you really like that, and I mean really like that, that means you're getting another one. This video is exactly what it says on the tin. I've got a bunch of furry animes to talk about, so sit your butts down and listen as we get started. One manga I remember reading right as it came out was this one right here, Nehime to Kimono no O, or as anime watchers would say, The Sacrificial Princess and the King of Beasts. The series follows a human girl named Salafi who is supposed to be a sacrifice. You see, the world is basically divided into two, the human kingdom of Yoana and the kingdom of Beasts as Margot. The two sides have reluctantly reached a deal. Every so often a human girl is sent to be sacrificed at the Beast King's hands, or well, paws. Salafi has always known this would be her fate. She's known from the start that the only reason she was born was so her parents wouldn't lose their actual child. To Salafi's surprise, the King of Beasts is not only half human, he's also been sparing the sacrifices. And to the King's surprise, he finds himself so incredibly taken with Salafi. And in a single moment of realization, the King decides to make her his queen, despite the outrage. And that's pretty much the premise. The plot does go on to include a series of trials for Salafi, challengers to the King's throne, and all that other good stuff. The plot is often compared to Beauty and the Beast, and I get why. It's a story about a human falling in love with a monster focused on kingdoms and royalty and so on. The entire story maintains this very storybook or fairy tale feel, especially in the earlier portions when the main thing is Salafi undergoing trials. The story even has an evil advisor, or well, not really evil, he's just a dick. I really do like the main characters, Salafi and the King of Beasts, Leonhardt. While Salafi could easily be understood as a damsel in distress, that's very quickly dispelled after the first episode when she's no longer staying by force. In fact, a lot of the conflict in the series is based on people intentionally trying to get rid of Salafi. The story's deuteragonist, Leonhardt, is defined by contrast. On one hand, he appears to be strong and stalwart, a being of strict nature. And yet, as we see when he spares the sacrifices, he's much kinder than he presents. The fact that he habitually reverts back into a human form and is forced to hide himself away shows a surprising level of vulnerability. There's also the dynamic that while Leonhardt has physical strength, he relies on Salafi's strength of character in dire times. When Leonhardt's self-doubts and vulnerabilities begin to creep up, it's Salafi that convinces him to keep going. That's just one way the show emphasizes that Salafi's greatest strength is her character and how she can convince others to fight for a better world. Like when she takes Lantenveld as her bodyguard despite the discrimination hyenas face. She places earnest trust in him and fights to prove his innocence, thus earning his genuine respect and allegiance. Despite the tried and true tropes used in the story, the characters themselves add depth where there isn't any in the plot. Let's go back to the rude advisor, Anubis. Towards the middle of the series, we get to see his backstory and we learn that he's not objecting to Salafi out of hatred. He's genuinely loyal to Leonhardt and genuinely thinks his rule is in peril if he chooses to have a human as his bride. That's part of the reason Salafi even undergoes the trials to begin with, to prove to the people she's worthy of regency. But now that I've talked about the good, let me address the anime's biggest flaws. One is in the nature of the story, and that's how long it takes the story to get to its point. It suffers from what's called a sagging middle, where the beginning and end of the story are very good, but actually getting there is, not quite. The episodes themselves aren't bad, and they are necessary to get the full payoff of the ending, but they are quite mid. Honestly, it led me to understand why I dropped the manga, because it's just kind of boring in the middle. The second flaw is unique to the anime, and that's how bland the animation is. Like, there's nothing really special going on, and I know that you can't really do too much when a decent chunk of the series is people talking, but like, it just feels so lifeless. There's almost never any cool or impressive choreography to the fights, just characters attacking things. The best, or I suppose worst, example of this is the fight between Jormungandr and Gleipnir. Just look at this, it's almost laughably phoned in. And it's made even weirder by the fact that the particle effects, special effects, or whatever are actually kind of good. However, please don't let these flaws stop you from watching the anime. For the love of God, please stick with it because this anime succeeds where so many anime and manga fail. It has a fucking perfect ending. One of the story's major themes is the divide between not only humans and beasts, but also within beast kind. There's the persecution of hyenas that I mentioned before, but there's also a divide between warm-blooded beasts and lizard folk and amphibians. Part of the reason why the middle is so slow is because it's all about Salafi seeing those things for herself. And the ending pays it off so well. Seeing all the threads of the people Salafi has helped meet up together at the end to tell a message about overcoming racism and unity. And the story doesn't even really trip over itself with its allegory either. It's the kind of ending Brand New Animal wishes it had. I've got to give this anime a 9 out of 10, it's just barely held back by its flaws. It's good enough that I genuinely wanted more of it, and more does exist because it got a small sequel series called The White Rabbit and the Beast Prince. Sadly, it's completely untranslated, and I do mean completely. I haven't even been able to find those pirated fan translations of the thing, which makes me very sad. If you watched my last video, clicky clicky linky linky, you should know about this one, and I wasn't lying when I said I'd get straight to watching it, but I didn't expect to love it this much. Of course, I'm talking about Dragon Goes House Hunting. It's an anime that aired way back in 2021, and it follows a dragon named Letty who gets kicked out by his parents. But that's not really a problem, after all, Letty's a fucking dragon. Or well, it wouldn't be if Letty wasn't a total fucking loser. His stat card is lower than his newborn son's. That's how bad it is. In a world where dragons are hunted for their parts and slain by heroes, Letty pretty much has no chance of survival until he meets Diaria. He decides to help Letty find a house because not only is he an elf, but he's also a real estate agent and the Demon Lord? The elf Diaria, the Demon Lord of real estate. On one hand, you're probably saying this seems like a stupid concept. I certainly did, until I thought about it for a second. House hunting is a unique premise that gives the story a nice, natural way to introduce us to a variety of places, peoples, and stories. It's an ideal premise for a semi-episodic comedy, like you may have guessed from its name. Letty is a lot like Kazuma from Konosuba. He's the butt monkey, the one bad things happen to make us laugh. However, unlike Kazuma, Letty is genuinely a good person and literally doesn't have the stats or skills to cause harm. Normally, this wouldn't be funny since we're seeing a character undeserving of harm getting hurt, but that's where Diaria comes in. He's the story's deadpan deuteragonist, undercutting Letty's bombastic reactions by treating everything as if it's normal. Sometimes, he's even the one to put Letty in peril, but he's also the safety net. No matter who Letty fights or where he is, or even if he dies, Diaria is always waiting in the wings with a lightning, teleport, or even a resurrection spell. Because of that, we're allowed to laugh at Letty's suffering because he's never in any real danger. If some of your favorite characters are King from One Punch Man or Buggy from One Piece, you'll absolutely fall in love with Letty. People always assume he's so cool and awesome when his stats are so bad you have to lie to his son about his father being a loser. He can't even breathe fire and yet people think he can burn down an entire kingdom. How does a house he built to live in become one of the top 10 best dungeons? It's so fun to see Letty build this grander-than-life legend of himself as he explores the world. The world of Dragon Goes House Hunting isn't particularly unique on the surface, it's something you've seen before. There's heroes, kings, dragons, stat cards, skills, demon lords, and the usual yada yada yada. Although, the story is more based on things like retro Dragon Quest rather than whatever light novels are doing. However, while the setting isn't unique, the concept for the story lets us explore the world in an entirely new context. We're not on some stock standard quest, we're a dragon and an elf looking for a dungeon to live in. And as you watch it, you come to understand that while it has the trappings of a basic fantasy anime, it's something unique unto itself. because the series focuses so heavily on non-human characters behaving in these intensely human ways. It's shown at the start of the series when the monsters aren't monsters, they genuinely want to help Letty find a home. From the guards who live at the house Letty built to the group at the Coliseum, they're just wonderful, intensely human characters. Those guards see Letty take in non-human after non-human, and their gratitude grows and grows to the point that they start to spread rumors about the Flame Dragon Lord. And the group of the monsters at the Coliseum is a perfect bait and switch. Letty gets kidnapped, and you think the situation is dire, but all the fights are rigged, and the monsters are all buddies. This isn't the Hunger Games, it's the WWE. To the point where even the guards, and I use that term loosely, are in on the shenanigans. And since this is a comedy, I'd be remiss not to mention the wonderful sense of humor. Letty will be staying at night in the haunted house, so Diaria will give him a vacuum in case he runs into any ghosts, and a typewriter and ink ribbon in case anything goes wrong. What about when Letty is doing some odd jobs for money and he learns that heroes have really taken to building houses with uniform cubes, or when he gets the ultimate stealth tools, a cardboard box and a porn mag? One of my favorite jokes has to be the Sphinx's riddle.
Last riddle. Your unit's allotment of beer was stolen by one of your companions and sold away. Tell me, who pilfered all that alcohol? Here's a hint. The culprit is wearing brand new gear.
But what really brings Dragongoost house hunting to a height that goes deeper than just a good comedy anime is its themes. The fact that Letty is looking to buy a home actually means something because the story is all about growing up and maturity. At the start of the series, he's weak-willed and naive, only willing to run away from his problems. But as the story goes on, Letty learns to put his foot down. He saves an egg and adopts a kid, chooses to help the Coliseum monsters escape, saves a princess, and even helps her mend the rift with her father. Even Diaria gets a huge flashback arc to the time he first helped the dragon find a home, a time when he wasn't so deadpan. Honestly, for a flashback, it's on the level of Naruto's for sheer quality. The Black Dragon Varney is such a wonderful contrast from Letty. Where Letty is weak, Varney is strong. Where Letty is kind, Varney is an asshole. We learned that before Diaria was a real estate agent, he was a bookworm, and it's only by being forced to find Varney a house that Diaria first travels the world. We see him make those connections he calls up in the main quest and learns that not everything can be learned from a book. And thus it makes sense why he leaves Letty in the path of danger so often. He's trying to let Letty grow the same way he did. I would love to have an entire series about Diaria and Varney, and what we get with Letty and Diaria is pretty good too. I'm giving this a 10 out of 10. It's a wonderful, fantastic experience. I'm someone who regularly drops animes I enjoy for no good reason, and yet I finished this one in 2 days. Oh, did you know that the series actually finished? The manga ended in 2022, and the final volume will be translated into English in like July, I think. I'm probably going to buy the entire series when it drops. By the way, remember to like and subscribe, donate to my Ko-fi and Patreon, and leave any furry anime recommendations you have in the comments. The next series is another comedy. Look, I don't know what you want me to do. It's not my fault most furry animes are comedies. And the name of said comedy is African Salaryman. Okay, well, technically it's African Office Worker, but the Japanese is Africa No Salaryman, and I just like the sound of African Salaryman more. It's a simple series about a world like Beastars where the characters being animals aren't just for show. It does impact their behavior and the stories told within the show, however, rather than being a coming-of-age drama, African Salaryman is a comedy. The plot is centered around 3 animals who work at a simple sales company. We have the middle manager, Lion, and his 2 subordinates, Lizard and Toucan. Each of these 3 main characters have simple gimmicks. Lion, despite being king of the jungle and having a scary face, is a pathetic, middle-aged man. Lizard is eminently normal and just a victim of the world's chaos. And Toucan is a blight upon society. 3 good gimmicks that suit the nature of the story, that being, surprise surprise, an episodic comedy. Although I must admit, this doesn't feel like a comedy anime. To be honest, it feels more like something I'd see on Adult Swim. This is partially due to the multitude of raunchy jokes that pervade the series, like Toucan having multiple girlfriends and his love for MILFs. I'm not making that one up, that's literally in the show. And I think it's also partially due to the animation style, something that first attracted me to the series. Rather than being 2D, it's mostly done in 3D CGI with some 2D scenes thrown into the mix. The show really takes advantage of the medium to give itself a unique feeling. Unlike something like Beastars, by the way, I have an entire video on that if you want to watch, click here, the animation in African Salaryman is much clunkier. You'll notice that characters' hands sometimes don't move, staying flat and outstretched. The gestures are unrealistic, where every movement is intentionally exaggerated. And on rare occasions, the show just throws good sense out of the water and does whatever this is to the models. Yes, all these things are weird, but it suits the nature of the show being this bizarre and raunchy comedy. It gives the show a feeling that reminds me a bit of Panty and Stocking with Garter Belt. A raunchy comedy that did all it could to set itself apart visually, but does the writing in African Salaryman match Gainax's masterpiece? I already mentioned the three main characters, but there are quite a few members of the supporting cast. There's President Turtle, who hates his employees, loves money, and forces his insane whims on those who work beneath him, which is basically everyone. There's the Ninja Crane, who secretly has a YouTube channel, Honey Guide, who's somehow worse than Toucan, and his boss, Honey Badger. There's Caracol from HR and the Lethal Hamster, who are pretty much nothing burgers of characters, and yeah, I know that's weird when one of them is a literal knife-wielding hamster. A lot of the episodes focus on semi-realistic office hijinks like going on a business trip or needing to quickly throw together a presentation. Though, the series' best jokes happen when the writing actually pays attention to the fact that the characters are animals. Such as a dentist being afraid to do dental work on a lion due to him being, well, a lion. Or how Toucan often rips Lizard's tail off whenever he needs a quick getaway. It adds substance and uniqueness to African Salaryman, letting the series tell jokes that others aren't able to do, and it often shows because the jokes about them being animals tend to be pretty funny. But it's when they blend the fact that the characters are animals with the fact that they're also salarymen that you get the jokes that hit the hardest. Like what I mentioned about Lion going to the dentist. Not only is the dentist afraid, but every time Lion gets told bad news, he bites down, like someone eating the food he left in the company fridge. Sadly, not every joke is as well structured as those. A good portion of them don't even have all that much to do with them being animals. Like Lion being forcefully invited to a mixer or Toucan dying and reaching enlightenment on his way to work. Sure, these jokes are based on the salaryman part of the series, but they're pretty lacking in the animal aspect. Another flaw is that the series doesn't spread its attention evenly. The narrative focuses so much on Toucan to the point that it's genuinely weird. If you had to ask me, I would suspect that Lion of all characters would be the protagonist. After all, he's the one we see wake up when the show begins, but it's really Toucan. Seriously, have you noticed how he's in almost all of the clips I've been showing you? I get why he's such a focus. It's funny when bad things happen to terrible people, and Lion and Lizard aren't terrible people, so you have to use Toucan if you want any decent slapstick comedy. It's probably why almost every other character in the show, aside from Lion and Lizard, are horrible people too. Overall, my opinion of the anime is definitely higher than most other reviews I've seen. I love the visual style, and on occasion there was a joke that genuinely got a good laugh from me. I'll give Africa No Salaryman a 6 or a 7 out of 10. Watch it if you're interested, but if you're not, then don't bother. Future Fury here, so it was only when editing that I learned that there are shorts after the credits of every episode. They follow Lion's daughter Shishimura and her friend Gorumi as they do high school girl things. And I know this is gonna sound a bit weird, but I actually like these more than the main series. Maybe it's due to it being smaller, but the jokes in just about every short are well constructed and funny, making good use of what makes the series unique. Like Shishimura doing that thing where the girl runs late for school, but she has a zebra leg in her mouth rather than toast. It's not just that she's a high school girl, or just that she's an animal. It's both. Now, back on topic and on to the next thing. The next series we have is different from the rest, not that it isn't comedy, making the third one in this video alone, but that it's a series of shorts rather than full-length episodes. And these shorts are named Workplace Buddies. This will probably be the most niche series we'll be talking about today. It follows two college students, the orange cat Chatarazawa Tapio and his gray cat buddy Roshihara Kuehiko. The two of them work odd jobs with weird people to get money, and that sets the record for the quickest I've ever explained a premise. And for a series of shorts, it's a good premise. For a small series that's primarily focused on jokes, the premise gives them enough of an excuse to bounce around from setting to setting and character to character. Sometimes they're working with a crab at a knockoff Blockbuster who has a rivalry with one of the customers. Or maybe they're working at a yakiniku place serving up cuts of beef with an overzealous bull. I'm gonna try not to think about that one too hard. The reoccurring characters are few and far between, usually split between season 1 and 2 and often making cameos rather than being focuses. Aside from the main two, the big one in the first season is Kuehiko's younger sister, who shows up once or twice. The biggest reoccurring character that's not the protagonist is, this thing. I think it's a koala, but I really have no idea. Kinda looks like one, but I ain't no animal doctor. Its role is to end each episode in a nice, punchy way, usually elucidating the lesson. He's often included as part of a semi-fourth wall breaking joke where the characters do acknowledge that he exists, but he talks directly to us, the audience. While it does seem kind of stupid, it does work fairly well, giving you something to remember an episode by and a nice lesson to go along with it. Honestly, he does have a few gems of a quote that are worth putting as your phone background. My personal favorite being that it's what choosing to spend your salary on that makes boys into men. It's part of the greatest strength of working buddies, that being the series has a lot of heart. The show has 2 seasons and both of them end in great emotional beats that leave you with a nice warm fuzzy feeling when it's all over. Like in season 1, it's revealed that Kuehiko has been working all those jobs and saving all that money to celebrate his mother's birthday. And at the end of season 2, it's revealed that Kuehiko has planned a surprise birthday party for Tapio. The biggest problem with the series is that the episodes are just so okay. It's a comedy anime that didn't get any laughs from me. If it wasn't a bunch of shorts, I doubt I'd be able to watch it all the way through. I think the best way to describe it is that the episodes are amusing, but not that funny. Watching them all the way through was a genuine struggle because they just aren't as good as African Salaryman and certainly not Dragongoost House Hunting. To be honest, one of the biggest reasons I kept watching the series was because I liked the art style. Yeah, I know that's weird, but just look at it. It's a good mix between paper cutout puppets and something like Chowder, where the backgrounds that make up the characters kind of move independently. It may not have been funny, but it was good to look at all the way through. Or well, almost, because for one episode in the second season it was suddenly live action and I did not like that. It kept the mid-writing but got rid of the good visuals. Horrible choice. I wish the visuals could make up for the major shortcomings of most of the episodes being just okay. I'll give Working Buddies a 6 out of 10. It should count itself lucky because if I was in a worse mood, it'd be a 5. Okay, so before I get to the last one, understand something. I originally wanted to cover Beastars in this before I remembered I already did a video about it, and I'm not desperate enough to repeat content, at least not yet. Then I decided to cover the Donghua White Cat Legend, but the translation on that one was spotty and I needed to do more research. It was a whole thing, so that fell through. Seeing as how it's Saturday, or well, I wrote this script on Saturday, right now it's actually nearly 3 AM on Sunday, the day this video goes up, I had to quickly find something to cover. And so, I resort to Old Reliable, a comfort movie I watch habitually, The Cat Returns. Future Fury here, it was actually this part which caused the entire video to get copyright struck, so instead of footage from the movie, I'm throwing on some Elden Ring gameplay. I'm sorry the audio doesn't match the video, but YouTube's run by a bunch of fucking assholes, so there's not much I can do about it. The Cat Returns is an anime movie made by Studio Ghibli in 2002 as a spin-off of an earlier movie, Whisper of the Heart. It follows a high school student named Haru whose life has stagnated, always late for school, clumsy as all hell, and her crush Machida doesn't even know she exists. But things get more complicated when she ends up unknowingly saving the Cat Prince and thus earning a few rewards from the Cat Kingdom. However, the rewards Haru gets suck, and continue to suck, but things still manage to get worse when she learns she's supposed to marry the Cat Prince. But a strange voice tells her to seek out a fat cat in the Cat Bureau. She listens to the voice and finally meets the movie's main man, Baron Humphrey von Gickingen, the doll with the soul, and the rest of those at the Cat Bureau, the living statue Toto, and the fat cat Muta. But the introductions don't last long as the cats forcefully take her to become their new princess and the story really begins, which is where I'll stop the summary. Right away, I do like Haru as a character, even if she is a bit generic. Her motivations are pretty much non-existent, she's just idly going through life, which to be fair is her main source of conflict. I also think what helps her feel less generic despite her lack of ambition is how much of a mess she is. I know I said idly ambles, but let's be real here. She bumbles. She bumbles through it incessantly, making her actions interesting to watch even if her character isn't. Her character does get more interesting as the movie proceeds and the inciting incident takes place where she saves the prince. What I really like about the inciting incident is that it's the author making a promise to the audience. Haru's main problem is her stasis and how she doesn't take decisive action. However, we see that she is more than capable of it when she saves the cat, and we get further insistence of her good nature through that small flashback where she feeds the cat. It's interesting the way the movie manages to give us a protagonist who by all means has nothing unique about them but manages to drum up interest regardless. There's also plenty of moments meant to endear us to Haru's good nature, like when she apologizes for accidentally sitting on Muta. And there's plenty to love in all the side characters at the Cat's Bureau. Muta is one of those characters who's only fat and lazy on the surface but just exist on their own terms. He's rude and abrasive, often clashing with the crow Toto, but when push comes to shove and Haru is kidnapped, he goes right ahead with the rest. He even encourages Haru's growth as she learns to put her foot down and be less passive. And how could I go this long without talking about the Cat in the Hat? Well, actually Baron's only a doll, so doll in the hat. Despite being the main man, he doesn't even serve as the story's deuteragonist, only a member of the supporting cast, and I can see why. Baron is like Lupin from Lupin III, but without the bumbling goofiness. He's cool, suave, and confident, succeeding with the plum at everything he does, and such a flawless character that he'd make for a poor protagonist. That said, Baron is a wonderful member of the supporting cast, and it's clear why he steals the show. Always saving the day, encouraging Haru's growth, and he just looks so fucking cool while doing it. Dude does a little twirly twirl to get on a bird. It's fucking awesome. There's also the bird Toto, but out of the entire Cat's Bureau, he's the least important. And now is also a good time to bring up the animation because it is impressively smooth. From Toto twirling through the trees as they chase after Haru to Baron disarming the King of Cats, every bit of this movie just looks good. And I love the movie's antagonist, the King of Cats. Something about the way he talks and moves is just so much fun to see and hear. He has this casual air and refers to everyone as babe until he gets angry and his fur starts to spike up and his movements begin to jerk around. But what always impressed me most about The Cat Returns is how tight the story is. You know how at the beginning of the video when I was talking about the sacrificial princess, I brought up how those boring moments in the middle were necessary for the super satisfying end? The Cat Returns does that too, but manages to have it so those middle moments aren't even boring. Like at the beginning, Baron makes mention of Muta having left the Kingdom of Cats, and we see the advisor almost recognize him, only for the reveal of Munta's real name at the end being Ronaldo Moon, one of the Cat Kingdom's greatest criminals. But it goes so far beyond that, where it makes such good use of its small cast of characters, assigning them multiple roles. Just doing a brief timeline, the white cat Haru saved at the beginning was Yuki. Haru then saves Prince Loon. Yuki is not only the one to tell Haru to go to the Cat Bureau, but she also helps out Haru in the Cat Kingdom, and Prince Loon does as well. And then it's explained the reason he was almost hit by the car was because he was getting those fish crackers Haru first shared with Yuki. Even benign stuff like the movie opening with Haru turning off her clock and bookending with Haru's mother being the one to turn off her alarm clock. Every detail just reinforces itself to tell a super tight story with the time it has. Of course, I'm giving this movie a 10 out of 10. Go watch it. Go watch it right now. And that wraps this video up, and thank God for that. This video is supposed to go live in like 4 hours. So, what did you think of the video? Not bad, right? And also, to those that skipped to the timestamp, hello and welcome back. Getting right into it, the first thing we're talking about today is the visual novel, a brand new, okay, well, kinda new, it was new when I was writing this, visual novel named Gena. And no, I did not mispronounce that. This game is set in Poland and thus very Polish. The protagonist of this visual novel is Tomasz Tyszko, a law student dropout who now works as the assistant to the Doberman detective Marcus. Tom has been working with Marcus on a case regarding a bull named Camille who disappeared but recently turned up again. However, the case is honestly in the background of Tom's much more pressing problems. The first of them being that Tom is working 2 jobs. The first is with Marcus, but the second is at a local store. Things get weird when a group of strange men come looking for the brother of the store's owner. And things get even weirder when Tom's old friend David suddenly comes back from Germany. And that's despite David's sudden disappearance, leaving his father and brother alone for 6 years while he was gone. And that, on top of Tom's mother recently dying, his dad becoming a somber alcoholic who recently quit his job to Tom's surprise. Honestly, this is the first release of the visual novel, and this dude's life is mired in problems already, and that's part of what I like about it. These problems are very mundane and very real in their own way, like worrying about rent and catching up with someone you're not quite sure you still call your friend. They add this visceral sense of realness to the story, which is quite important to the overall theme and feeling of the text. Seeing as how that's a spoiler, I'm gonna save that for later, so let's discuss the other parts of the VN, the visuals and the music. To be honest, both of those parts are some of the best I've seen. The music is quiet and understated, fitting the tone of this Polish detective novel. Notably, the visual novel does try to be diegetic when it can. Especially when Tom and David go to a pub where there's a crowd beneath the music which fades out when they leave. It helps elevate the scene to truly bring you into the moment. And the visuals are one of my favorite parts, and I don't just mean the sprite or backgrounds. Having the text box be a case file is so nice, and I just love the little attached picture. It's quite well done and helps Gena feel holistic despite only the first chapter being out. The game also makes liberal use of animation, like having a character move during a scene or having a rain overlay when you're outside. The part that really impressed me most was when you can see Marcus's tail wagging. It was just really cute and really nice. But now it's time for me to wrap this section up, so here's a spoiler warning and a timestamp for some quite important stuff I want to talk about. What I love about Gena and why the realistic feeling and tone was so important is because the visual novel is like Echo. Realistic at first, but with the overtones of supernatural horror baked into the bread. The visual novel is a masterclass in how to truly make those creepy moments feel fucking creepy. Like at the beginning, there's a moment when Camille shows up at Tom's house and it's genuinely one of the most fucked things. There's this genuine disturbance and the sheer feeling of invasion when it happens. And then there's Camille's words. Do you see them too? And we're left to just ponder their ominous meaning. There are other moments of horror, like Tom getting his insides torn out by a ghost hand, but it's that moment with Camille that is the most standout thing in the visual novel to me. And for those that skipped to the timestamp, hello and welcome back. Gena is a wonderful experience, especially for how short it is, being only around 1 to 2 hours. And despite the lack of content so far, I can tell it's going to be a game with depth, feeling, and details. Like, have you noticed that if you wait on the title screen, you can see a shadow person in the background? I'm on the edge of my seat for the next update, and to quote Star Wars, we will be watching your career with great interest. Gena gets an 8 out of 10 for me, only held back by being so short, and if it keeps up the good work, it's definitely going to be a 10 out of 10 experience. If you want to try it for yourself, there's a link to it in the description. The second thing we're covering is actually an animated short film called Here's the Plan. It's Chilean in origin and made by the Chilean animator Fernanda Frick Hasenberg back in 2017. Notably, the funding came from Chile's National Council of Culture and Arts, which I think is pretty cool. The short is only 18.5 minutes long, so if you really want to, feel free to pause the video and watch it. The link is in the description. The animation follows the newly married Doug the dog and Cat the cat, and oh, I just got that pun. I may be a little stupid. The name of the short comes from the plan Doug and Cat have for their lives. They want to open a bakery and get started out of their own home, but their oven breaks and the plan gets put on hold. Doug gets a job at a coffee shop and Cat gets a job in sales and advertisements. And they do replace their oven, but something is not quite right in Cat's eyes, so they do upgrade their kitchen again. Doug wants to go back to the plan, but the time isn't right. What about the money they're making now, the upgrades to their house, and the plan gets put on hiatus once more? They grow further and further apart and nearly get divorced, but Kat's just barely able to patch things up and they start their bakery in a new house. The plot of the short is lackluster in my personal opinion, though that's probably because I'm a bisexual in my early 20s who doesn't want to date, let alone marry. Though the short does do its best to make us care about them, taking a lot of time to show their relationship despite a sub 20-minute runtime. And the time it takes does work, letting us really see the rift in their relationship form. The moment where Doug accidentally bumps into Kat and bloodies her nose, there's this awkward beat where we and the characters are told to just process what happened. The biggest treat of the short is its visual finesse and the way the metaphor translates into the story. The most obvious of which being when the wedding cake ornament breaks, but there are more subtle ones too. Like as how when they upgrade their house, the colors go from rich blues and pinks to white and black, suggesting a loss of passion and vibrancy. There's also the two scenes right here, first where we see Kat break through the Muntin. Oh, by the way, those bars in your windows are called Muntins. Had to look that one up. And the Muntin moment is opposed to this one right here, where Kat can't cross the divide made by the pillar, suggesting their separation. Or even how when they go to bed, it's Doug who still holds on to their dreams that are in the light, even when it's night, opposed to Kat who's in the dark, even when it's day. Going beyond the visual metaphors, the models are just cute in their simplicity. They've got nice round shapes and subtle touches of color to give them depth, like the pink on Doug's nose. However, the short's greatest weakness is the sound design. Not that the music is bad, in fact it's really good, working alongside the visuals to evoke emotions and convey the message. There's even really cool touches like their voices echoing off their hardwood floors, which wasn't needed but is appreciated. But Doug's voice, it is too loud. I don't mean to be a communications major, but he should have turned the gain down and got a pop filter for his mic. It's not the biggest issue, but it did genuinely begin to annoy me. That's why I'm going to give Here's the Plan a 9 out of 10. It's a good short, but seriously, how did that VO not get redone? And that's that. Sorry the new part of the video is so short, but I had to spend most of my time this week dealing with copyright issues. I did have a third section planned where I wanted to cover the furry fighting game Mofu Mofu Sensen, but I'll just have to make that its own video, I guess. And now it's time for me to shamelessly reuse the Patreon shoutouts. This is a re-upload after all. For our 3 stars, we have special thanks to 87 Werog, Deku, Zora Chow, Choron, Ganlafei, Dragon Yara, Anon C, Lightning Shadow, and Kayun. For 4 stars, we have Miki Moon and Miko, the Shadows of Yarnum. And for our super duper special 5-star shoutouts, we have first Vanilla Flower, the Witch of Hemwick. Second, Poor Mage, the One Reborn. Then the Good Old Days, the Vacuous Spider. Followed by Hodari Lion, host of the Nightmare. Next, Sky King 64, the Daughter of the Cosmos. Finally, Mahagasaur of the Astral Clock Tower. Thank you for watching. Do be sure to like and subscribe and donate to my Ko-fi and Patreon. As always, this is your host Furry signing out.